Now today we're going to try to show some of the work we did over the years on Vlad's track bike, from painting it when it was new to crash damage from the crash that he had, unfortunately, and we did the repair and repaint. A lot of that is just redundant work. We've done it more than once, more than twice, but it doesn't matter. To bring a bike back to where it's like brand new or even better, I really enjoy that. And this work that I do, I don't know how many other people do it, and I don't know how many other people share the information on YouTube, but I hope there are a lot. But I've been painting for a really long time, and I do enjoy sharing this type of information. Now, this is the repair we did to Vlad's track bike. We had helped Vlad when he first got the track bike take care of some issues of assembling the bodywork, and there was some fits and finishes and parts. He brought it over here. We worked on it out in the garage. And if I remember right, did some paint work on it, put a lot of stickers on it. He's a sponsored rider. So, and this is his dedicated track bike, and he needed to have all these sponsors, of course. So we did all that methodically. And then, of course, when you're a track bike rider, you know how accidents happen. You wind up in a ditch every once in a while. Ask me how I know. But anyway, Vlad asked me to do him a giant favor. And he's done me many favors, of course, because the season wasn't over and he wanted to use the track bike. And of course, because he's a sponsored rider, he doesn't want to have the bike look like he's homeless. So I took time, and this was in the middle of the summer, if I remember right. And we basically did some repair work. There was some fairing work. We had to get all of the old finish off of the fairing. And this is a rotary sander that was real handy to do this. A lot of the decals, when they came off, they pulled the paint off with it. I think this bike, even before he bought it, had been painted. Seemed like it had a lot of paint on it and some body filler in spots. But it's nothing we can't handle. But the stickers that were on there, the only way to get those stickers off, some of them, you just had to sand them off. It was amazing what kind of glue they had used. I guess those were the factory ones. I don't know. And there was one big gouge where the bike had been damaged. We had to work on that for a while. But again, this is the lower part of the fairing, so the only way I'm going to be able to fix that realistically without going down right down to raw fiberglass is going to be with CA. And luckily, I had just gotten some nice fresh CA, a whole bottle, and that made doing this kind of a repair a very practical thing. Now, without the CA, this really would have been a whole different job. I would have had to strip that paint off, and that would have been a real problem. So the thing is, you pour the CA on and immediately take a paper towel, rub it off, and then sand it down. And this fairing, if you look inside, it had already been repaired, I believe, more than once even. But again, this is why you have a track bike and you don't take your, it's why I don't take my R1 and use it for a track bike. I don't want to have to do this. But anyway, and a side note, the CA has been on many of the videos, how to use it and why we use it. And this came from Brodak.com. But these kind of places to repair it, the only way you're going to do it is with CA. Now, I remember when Glenn got his first track bike, the first Ducati, we used up several jars of CA, gluing the fairing parts back together. And to Glenn's credit, he learned very quickly how to sand these things down and how to do the repairs, and to his advantage, because he after that had other repairs he had to do on it. And I know he did them all very well. Najat also had his track bike. We used a lot of CA on doing work for him that he was very good at doing. He was an excellent student. But here we have a little power sander. Helps with some of the sanding. But ultimately, when you're done, the whole thing has to be done by hand. And to get the primer to stick. So the first thing on this, if you notice from the beginning of the video, simple green to clean it up. Get it really clean before you go sand it, because if you don't, you're sanding the grease down into the part. On this kind of a part, real important, because usually inside that part there's some residual oil or grease or dirt, stones, dead bugs and animals and whatever. So getting it clean right in the beginning of the video is step one, and getting everything sanded smooth and etched. And here we're cleaning it with M600, but it's really important. And I've used a lot of these degreasing agents. M600 Sickens is the best, but you can't buy it here anymore. So we have other products that are nowhere near as good. But if it's possible, you can get Sikkens M600. That's the product to use. Now, primer sealer, real important. Not ordinary car primer, primer sealer. Because this part, there's going to be a lot of edges to where the bodywork, where one sand out meets the next sand out. We want to get a real nice coat of primer on this, and then at least let it dry overnight before we go on to the next step. But this was only one of several parts I had to work on this bike. So we can always put this one away to dry while we work on other ones. Or if we run out of time, it's always good. And it's always to your advantage to have it dry overnight. In my case, I usually just put it in the garage, let it dry overnight, and work on it again and the next day. So with the primer dry overnight, and get out a sanding block and some 600 sandpaper, 400, 600, it doesn't really, not critical, doesn't really matter. But we wanted to take care of all the little imperfections in this. And what's going to happen as soon as you go with a sanding block and some water, what's going to happen? The bad spots are going to come right to the surface. We call them the mountaintops. But we want to take care of all of this now, because if we don't get a good base on this, when I go to put the blue on, it's going to look like, well, something I don't want it to look like. And the nice thing about this is when you're working on a track bike, yeah, you have a little bit of room for error. But in the case of Vlad and the case of myself, even if it's a track bike, I'd want it to be perfect, and so does Vlad. And some people, whenever I've worked on a track bike, that's good enough, yeah. But some people are very fussy, and I enjoy working on a bike for somebody when they're fussy a lot more than if they just don't care. And we've had a lot of people learn how to paint in the shop, learn how to do body work. The list could go on and on. But at this point, when you have a sanding block, you see the high spots coming up. Pretty simple to figure out what's got to happen from here. You've got to go back over it, and until you have it, do that. All the steps from today, do them over and over until that part is in perfect prime, and I mean perfect. Or the time you spend, and in this case, the money of the paint is now, the last time I painted my MT-09, I bought a quart of paint, was $309. So you really don't want to waste anything. The body supplies, the CA has doubled in price, so everything we try to do as efficiently as possible. And I try, when I do a video like this, not to leave out any critical steps. So for somebody that wanted to do this to fix their own bike, their own track bike, or any bike, you pretty much would have all of the steps you need to do it correctly. Now, after several back and forth doing the body work, I finally got it to where I was happy with it. And I'm sure Vlad was happy with it too. But if this actually turns into being a lot of work when you want to get it right, and we used up, I think, almost a whole jar of CA on this project. But that's the best way to do it, because CA doesn't crack as easily as Bondo does. And in the final result, when you put all this time and energy into a project, boy, the last thing you want to know is, well, it cracked. And in this case, he's got other work to do on this. There's other parts of his bike, and I didn't want to make the video too long, but we did have to go back and forth with the primer sealer several times, but it was worth it. In the very end, it was worth it. Now, a couple of things to really shake that primer up, but that's always a big problem when you're using this primer. It's relatively thick. It goes on nice. I haven't found it to be any better or worse than a Rust-Oleum Duplicolor, as long as it says the word sealer. The key thing is that it says sealer. And then you don't get those funny little edges coming up where the body work ends and the paint work begins. That's a tip, by the way, that's worth its weight in gold, and it's on all of my tutorial videos. Now, painting the blue, since we already had the blue paint that Vlad bought the original time we painted the bike, so we didn't have to wait to run to the body shop or get custom paint mixed. This is the real Suzuki blue, and we know it's going to be a really good match. There's never a problem with any of these paints. If you've already painted the bike and you have leftover paint, it guarantees you'll get a good match. But in this case, now because it's a track bike, the rules of engagement are just a little bit different. Now, I wanted to make this part as nice as possible, but again, I did not want to spend 100 hours on it. But I used a 5-star clear. Here's the numbers, and this clear goes on just beautifully. Now, if if you can imagine, I waited until I had a nice day. There was not a lot of wind blowing, because I knew this would be a labor of love just to get this part the way I wanted it, and to get any final clear, any final detailing on this. It was going to be a lot of time. So not having to deal with a bunch of bugs in the paint or dust. You see I'm painting in the corner there. Hopefully it blocks some of the wind too. Now, of course, none of this applies if you have a paint booth or you're using a different environment. I paint outdoors virtually all the time, and over the course of my lifetime, I've painted a lot of good stuff that's gone on to win a lot of awards. Now, Vlad came over with all his sponsorship stickers, and we had a great time doing this. I know I have a dedicated special video that we made of putting these stickers on, and it was a lot of fun. But to me, I'm not a sticker guy. I really don't like the look of a lot of stickers all over the bike, but it's his bike, and these are the sponsors and parts that he sells. He's in a motorcycle part and tire business, so we have to deal with stickers and sponsorships. But now I wanted to get clear on top of these. I just thought, if as long as we're going to go this far, we're into this so many hours, and I didn't want to compromise it at the very end. And I know it'll be a little more durable that way anyway. And hopefully then, if it's like that, they'll never crash again. We'll find out. But anyway, up to this point, a lot of this stuff, it's just a labor of love. There's a lot of sanding and a lot of sanding the primer and getting out the little flaws in the paint. But now the final thing is we're going to put on 3 to 5 more coats of clear, but we're going to put it on very, very thin. Now I use a big gun, but it's very, very low pressure. And it's probably 15 pounds of pressure if I can remember right. And a lot of coats, not just one thick blow it on coat. And I've emphasized that many, many times. If you try to paint this like you paint a car, you always run that risk that what's going to happen? You're probably going to wind up somewhere in the middle of the thing getting a run. But if you do it this way, it just seems like, to me, it works a lot better for me. And people I've tried to help learn how to paint, they've picked it up a lot easier. When you have a gun that's like just putting out a lot of paint all at once, and yes, painting a car, that's really to your advantage. But on a part like this, when you get a big run in it somewhere, it's annoying. And you have to get it out. You have to block sand it out, and then basically paint the whole thing over with clear again. But the way this played out, now I started out thinking, well, it's a track bike, and I do this all the time. It's a personality flaw of mine. I'll just get this painted blue, and put the stickers over where the body works bad and everything. But what happened is, as I start doing this, it usually takes just a little bit longer to do it right. If it takes 10 hours, it takes 11 hours to do it where you can't even tell it's been crashed. So in this case, because I know Vlad is a very fussy guy like I am, and I know he takes a lot of pride in his motorcycles, and I know another thing, when he goes to the track, he wants to present the image that he's an accomplished rider. So I get the whole thing. But not everybody that goes to track days is like that. And you often wonder, how did I get all the practice? How did I learn how to do all this stuff? I've had that question a lot of times. Well, there's a part of it you don't see on a video. In the 70s, when I was racing, I almost never came home with the bike not needing some touch-up paint or a repair or something that broke or something that stripped or something that needed a weld. But you learn real quick when you have to learn how to do it. And you learn even quicker when you don't have a lot of money. And I've had that as my teachers for my whole life. I learned how to do things economically and learned how to do them in the simplest possible way, and learned how to always try to help out my friends when they needed a little help with their bikes. I always just felt doing a little mitzvah for friends, that was, for me, that's a really good way to live. And I really ask other people to do it too. And we did a lot of other work on this bike from the very beginning when he bought it. And one of the funniest stories is about this bike, and I like to tell it over and over again. He brought the bike over here, and we had to line up some of the stickers. and the word Suzuki on the side of the bike is in big giant letters, and they had better had line up really, really nice. And we were real fussy. It took us almost a whole day to get all the stickers on the way he wanted. And from that point on, then, of course, there was some on the seat. And because he's a fussy guy, and I like working with him, but the big Suzuki, that big SUZ, boy, if that's off just a 64th of an inch, you can tell right away, because it has to carry on between the fairing parts and the big fairing part. So it was funny. It brings back some memories. Anyway, painting up the rest of these things, we put clear over all the stickers, and we wanted to have as nice a job as possible, of course. And then it's just a matter of labor. How many hours do you want to put into this, and how much work do you want to sand out some of that clear and get the final coat of clear on? None of that is real high-tech stuff, but that lower fairing, all the repair work that went into that fairing, holy mackerel, it's a good memory anyway. But when you're involved in motorcycling and you have a passion for anything, if you have a passion to build a wood boat or a hang glider or whatever, it doesn't matter. The passion gets you through a lot of these boring days. And the only thing here is, by doing this, and if I remember right, this took about a week. It was right in the middle of the prime, time that we would normally be doing this. But as I think back, maybe I'm wrong. There's still some snow on the ground. So maybe my memory is fading. See that big KI? Well, that SUZKI has to absolutely line up. And of course, the left side and the right side are totally different. And a set of those stickers is probably $100. So you don't want to get them on crooked. And boy, I'll give Vlad credit. And when it was done and we took pictures of the bike, it lined up perfectly. It absolutely lined up perfectly. But again, when you commit to doing this level of work, there's a price to be paid in terms of time, in terms of you've got to get, the paint is expensive now. Quite a lot. Even sandpaper is expensive. It's just crazy how expensive everything is. But I try to do it efficiently, and I try to pass on the information on these videos that I think might help some up-and-coming person that really wants to do this. Or I know how many people are on it that have learned from the video and sent me nice emails and put nice posts up on the comments on the videos. So I think in the end, when you have it all done and it's sitting there drying like this under some fluorescent lights, and you look at it and the day ends, you have a cup of coffee in one hand and you're laughing about how hard it was to hook up those decals, it really becomes a great memory. And working on this bike was a great memory, trust me. Now, I don't know what, if anybody in our local area anyway, has fixed, repaired more things than I have in the last 25 years, 30 years. That I've gotten good at doing this because I've done a lot of it, and I've done a lot of it on my own stuff. But while learning how to do this and do the repairs and use the CA and use the self-etching primer, I think I've come up with what I think is a reasonable formula that pretty much anybody with a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of ambition, if you scratch up your bike or you want to change the color of the bike, or you, over the winter time, you want to do a total restoration, I think all the information for doing it, every bit of that information, is on my videos, and you can look up any one of the topics, just put it in the search bar, and it'll come up. So if you're new to the channel or you've never seen any of my videos before, there's over 2,500 of them out there, and you just can use the search bar to find them in my channel, or put my name, if you're in YouTube, put my name in quotation marks, and then the subject, in this case it would be fairing repair, or any particular subject that you're interested in. And I hope the information I've put out there, I've made it kind of my life's work to put that information out there, and I hope you'll share it with your friends and use it to your advantage whenever you possibly can. But the biggest thing is, in doing so, that you'll be able to enjoy the passion you have for motorcycling. Because if you've watched the video up to this point, you probably have a passion for motorcycling, just like I do and most of my friends do. And to be able to share it with friends, I think that's a special part of YouTube. And guys, one and all, thanks so much for watching.